Hi everyone, so I'm going to talk about 10 of my favorite books that I read either in 2021 or 2022. These are in no particular order, except I'm going to start with 2 honorable mentions, but because I haven't been on here in a couple of years, I felt like I wanted to talk about some of the books that I really enjoyed. And this is hard to narrow down, so I'm sure there's books I left off, but let's get into it. So one of my honorable mentions, which I picked because I feel like this should be read in fall. There are definitely other honorable mentions I could have put in this place. But this is Hotel Magnifique by Emily J. Taylor. And this is a carnival-esque hotel. It shows up, you have to be invited. And it's very expensive to go to this hotel. And each room is a different elaborate theme. But the catch is, once you're done with this hotel, which is a traveling hotel, once you end, you don't remember it at all. There was this room that was like a teapot, and you were inside the teapot, and there was these games, and it was just magical, which I feel like is great for fall. And the novel follows 2 sisters, but it's following the older sister who does everything she can to get a job at this hotel because she wants to make money. They're supposed to get paid really well. Also, her sister gets chosen, but not her. So she has to find a way to get a job at this hotel, and it follows their journeys working at the hotel. And there is something that's maybe a little bit awry at this hotel. It wasn't quite perfect. I felt like it was a bit fast in points, and there were some questions I had, but it's definitely a fall atmospheric book that I recommend, and it is a book that I think would be better as a movie or TV show than it is as the book. But as it's this author's debut, I thought it was a great debut. Then we have my second honorable mention, which is The Littlest Library by Poppy Alexander. And this follows a woman who decides that, she needs to change her life up, shake some things out. And so she buys a house out in the country, and this house in the front yard has this old red British telephone booth because they are in the UK. And since this telephone booth is not working as a payphone anymore, she has to decide what she's going to do with this red telephone booth. And she turns it into a little library. And there's a cute little romance. And it's just a sweet, heartwarming story. I think it could be read all year round. But it's definitely got cozy vibes. All right, on to the 10 of my favorites in no particular order. The first one is going to be The Ivies by Alexa Dunn. This book is set at a New England boarding school that is for elite, the richest of the rich kids. And it follows a group of seniors who are trying to get into the Ivy Leagues, and a murder is committed. And you are trying to figure out who killed them. Whether is it a student? Is it somebody who's jealous? Is it a staff member? Who is it? And it's so atmospheric and spooky. The pacing is fantastic. My only qualm is I wanted the whodunit to be a different person. But it was really good. And if you like Gilmore Girls, it gives that vibe, but much more competitive. It's kind of like a mix between Gilmore Girls, Pretty Little Liars, mixed with like the college admissions scandal. And it's great at what it does. Another thriller, and this is now an adult thriller. This is Not a Happy Family by Sherry LaPena. And in this one, the parents are killed, and you're trying to figure out who did it. Is it somebody who works for the family? Is it a family member? If so, which one? And each of the people in the story have a reason to have committed the murder, which makes it very fun. It's kind of not quite an isolated closed circle mystery, but there is a small percentage of people who could have done this. You know all the characters, you get the story from multiple POVs, and it was a really good thriller. And I think it's set over Easter, so maybe a better book for the spring. but definitely like darker vibes and a great example of a domestic thriller. At the start of one of the years, it was like the book I read on New Year's Day, I believe, and this is 84 Charing Cross Road by Helen Hunt. If you're a book lover and you have not read this book, you have to pick it up. It was a great start, first book of the year. And it follows a woman in the time of World War II living in New York who is writing to a bookseller of an antiquarian bookshop, so somebody who sells good copies of books that are used. And they develop this relationship through him picking out books for her, and it's told in letters back and forth, and it's just very cute and heartwarming, and it's a true book for book lovers. Perfect for spooky season is The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling, and this book takes place leading up to Halloween, so perfect for October. And it starts out as a breakup gone bad, and the female character cursing this warlock. Not thinking anything of it, but as any good witch would do, like you curse your ex. And turns out this ex that she's cursed plays a very pivotal role in their town and the magic that runs through their town. And he comes back and chaos and hijinks ensue, and it kind of gives Halloween Town vibes. If you're a Disney Channel Halloween Town lover, but for grown-ups. And I really loved it. The romance was adorable. It was kind of like a enemies to lovers. Pick it up this fall. Next one is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I loved this book. I read it in the summer. It is an absolute beach read, and it follows sisters. And what I thought it did really well is it captured the sister relationship and the older younger sister vibe and the emotional bond of sisters. And it's another friends to enemies. The main lead is an editor, and lo and behold, the female lead is an agent who has sold this book to this editor. Chaos and romance ensue. It was really sweet. There's an independent bookshop and the cutest, like, old and falling apart town in the southern United States. I think it's in one of the Carolinas, but really cute. I read this book while on a beach vacation with my family in Galveston, and this was Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty. This was another great beach read, although you could read it in the fall because it does take care of a school year. But it's set in Australia, and it's following a bunch of kindergarten moms and kindergarten politics, and I really enjoyed it. The mystery element, which is the focus of the book, because you know a murder is taking place at the beginning, and then the entire book you're trying to figure out how this murder went down. But on top of that, it's female friendship and female experiences. And one of the things it's a trigger warning, but domestic violence and domestic abuse is featured in this book, and I think it does it well. And I really enjoyed it. I need to watch, I think it was like an HBO miniseries, but I really love this, and I want to pick up more Liane Moriarty because this book was captivating. So if you've read any of her other books, let me know which one you think I should read next. The next book I have is The Island of Missing Trees, and this takes place around the winter Christmas break. And it is a multi-generational story following a high school student who is, she was born in the UK, but her parents are from Cyprus. One is Turkish and one is Greek, and it goes through the Cyprus-Turkish-Greek war, and it's told from the perspective of a fig tree. I don't want to spoil anything, but there is this moment that absolutely broke me, about a bird and also about the most adorable gay couple who run this restaurant. And it really explores intergenerational grief, how grief is passed on, and also coming to terms with a moment of your life that went viral that you would have rather have not had online. And also, I think it promotes like an interesting discussion of like, do we really have the right to show other people's moments just because you pulled out a cell phone and captured a video of somebody else's traumatizing experience? But it was wonderful. It was beautiful. It was heartwarming. I highly recommend picking up the book, and it would make a really good read over Christmas. The next one is another YA thriller, and this is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This starts out as a high school senior's senior project, and she is chosen to find out what really happened because she doesn't believe what the news claimed as a murder that happened in a town, in her hometown. And she ends up documenting it in the form of a podcast, and she's doing this investigation, and she befriends the brother of the person who confessed to killing the young woman who was killed. And it goes into, did he really do it? And if he didn't, then who? And I really enjoyed it. There were so many plot twists, a couple I didn't see coming, and I thought the podcast element was interesting, and I really liked the methods that she used for this detection story. It seemed something that a realistic high schooler obsessed with true crime could do. The next book is a nonfiction book, and it's The Inconvenient Indian, A Curious Account of Native American People in North America by Thomas King. And he talks about American white government dealings with Native American nations and some of the things they did that weren't really legal, but it's kind of like, well, we've already done it, so what are you going to do about it? The effect that had on their people. And also the other thing, one of the things he talked about was Native American portrayal in media, which I thought was interesting. And also what he gives a little bit of like things he thinks can be done to improve Native American and government relations. And it's, as hard of a read it is, he is hopeful about it. And it was very educational. A couple of the complaints I had was that he would have like these long lists of things that were similar that had happened that I felt could have been more relegated toward footnotes. And the other thing is he didn't have really any citations, and I feel like having the citations would have improved his arguments, although I was able to research, and he is right about what he said. So he is extremely knowledgeable. I just would have preferred some sort of academic sources, even if, and those could even be Native American activist groups and things that they put together. So it doesn't have to be like academic scholarship, but something that's reputable. And I think I remember the pacing being slightly off, but it's a great nonfiction book, and I would recommend picking it up this November for Nonfiction November if you're participating. I found it to be a very good read, and it's a very enlightening, brief Indigenous history with non-Indigenous people, like those interactions. And I thought it was good. The last book I have is another nonfiction. This is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. In short, this is a journalist deep dive into the family of Henrietta Lacks and some of the history of her cells that are known as HeLa cells, which have played a huge role in cancer research. The thing I think the book did, to me, were two of the best parts of the book. A was the family story, but more importantly, there's this discussion of informed consent. You sign those consent forms every time you go to a hospital, particularly now if you're there's extra forms if you're participating in clinical trials. And I think it's important patients know their rights and also what's being done with the samples that are being collected, and the intent of that. I think that's very important for patients to know. And it was very shocking how much of that wasn't present till very recently. The other thing it goes into is a couple of scenarios in addition to Henrietta Lacks's experience of things that occurred without minorities knowing who were getting free or low care health care. What was being done wasn't explained well to them, or it was like on this piece of paper, and a lot of them in that time were illiterate. They couldn't go to school, or their education wasn't as good as their white counterparts, and so they didn't have the capacity to understand a lot of the terms, even the ones who were literate. And it shows why there's such distrust in the U.S. medical system. And it does it very well, and it shows some points of improvement that have happened, and it really makes you consider things that can be improved on. And anybody can read this. You do not have to understand the science to read this. It's a sad story, but it's extremely hopeful too. It doesn't talk too much about cancer. It talks about it a little bit in that it's relevant because it's part of Henrietta's story. It also shows extreme poverty levels that Americans to this day still experience. That if you don't live in those situations, you don't see. And so it helps give an appreciation for what you do have. And also how in these areas of extreme poverty, there's also a big sense of community and an importance on family. And so it was heartwarming in that way. But those are 10 of my favorite books that I read in 2021 and 2022. And I would like to know, what is a book you have either read recently or a couple of years ago that you would very much recommend? Because I've been a little bit out of the loop and I'm always looking for new recommendations. And I will see y'all later. Bye, y'all.